We've had our ups and downs, our fair share of battles lost, heirs killed, and comets sighted. But we're still making Paradox games. Now, I prepare to stand before you at our first public convention in Stockholm.
This week in gaming, the North American physical PC release of Halo Wars 2 has been cancelled. The game will only be released digitally on PC and physically and digitally on Xbox One. New creatures have finally come to Pokemon Go. Microsoft's E3 conference will take place Saturday, June 11th at 2 p.m. PST. Bethesda's will also take place on Sunday with no word on the time yet. Paradox Con has been announced for May 13th and 14th, 2017. PAX Australia is taking place October 27th through 29th, and Sony is killing PlayStation Now support for the PS Vita, PS TV, and PS3. This is 1RBC Gaming Weekly. First off, regarding Sony's discontinuation of PlayStation Now, on August 15, 2017, the subscription-based game streaming service will no longer be available for PlayStation 3, PlayStation Vita, or PlayStation TV. All Sony Blu-ray players and Samsung TVs that supported it will not anymore. Neither will 2013 through 2015 Sony Bravia TVs. It gets worse, however. 2016 Bravia TVs will have the PlayStation Now service discontinued on April 1st, 2017. That's 4 months earlier than everybody else. According to Sony, they're shifting their focus and resources to PS4 and Windows PC development, and that they give heartfelt thanks for your support. Just try and keep in mind what heartfelt support means to Sony come E3 when they're swinging around buzzwords like passion and PlayStation 4 gamers and PlayStation Nation and, well, you get the picture. Don't assume that a massive commercial entity represents your interests just because they manufacture equipment for your hobby. PlayStation Now is a bit like Netflix for PlayStation games. It's a cool concept and it was offering longevity to the PlayStation 3. Seeing that Sony's shutting it off for the platform really sucks, and further cements the idea that they've also given up on the Vita, the struggling handheld console that they've been slowly pulling away support for. What do you think? Should Sony continue supporting older platforms with a game streaming service, or is the cost simply too high? I'm assuming you're familiar with the costs of running a cloud computing platform and Sony's internal financial matters. Why else would I ask the audience? Hit us up on Twitter at OneRuleBeCool and be sure to share your thoughts. Last week, Valve announced the end of Steam Greenlight. In case you're unfamiliar with it, Steam Greenlight is how most indie games make it to Steam. Developers pay a fee of $100, have their game evaluated and voted on by the community, and eventually they go live on the storefront. As of late, however, Steam Greenlight has been flooded with trash, and the service hasn't done much to keep bad games off Steam, hence why Valve's replacing it with Steam Direct this spring. Their blog post last week raised a bit of controversy when they mentioned that the new fee for Steam Direct could be anywhere from $100 to $5,000. That's potentially enough to crush up-and-coming indie devs, and wouldn't be enough to keep shovelware off of Steam. In response, this week the video game crowdfunding platform Fig announced a $500,000 finishing fund to help indies pay the Steam Direct fee, as well as to grow their player bases, market their games, and pay for localization. Access to this fund will be open to developers on Fig who attract 1,000 or more backers to their Fig campaigns. So if you are crowdfunding a game on Fig, you don't have to factor in the cost of Steam Direct to your campaign's goal, assuming, of course, that you draw at least 1,000 backers. I'm not sure how to feel about the 1,000 backers requirement, because I feel like the program won't help the developers who need it the most. Those who are making the most niche games. Think about it. Games in incredibly niche genres will attract the least backers, even if they're the most enthusiastic. Fig would rather see 1,000 backers dropping $10 than 100 backers pledging 100. This is, pretty clearly, Fig trying to convince more people to just use their platform. The marketing offer to developers is a smart business move. People will see that successful games can be crowdfunded through Fig. What do you think? Would it be wise of Fig to try to reach out and help campaigns with smaller goals? If you're a developer, would you fund your game through Fig instead of going with Kickstarter or Indiegogo or another more traditional crowdfunding platform? Let us know what you think on Twitter at OneRuleBeCool. This week, the Entertainment Software Association has released Video Games in the 21st Century, the 2017 report. This is a report detailing the economic impact of video games in the United States. There are some pretty exciting numbers in here. One of the biggest highlights is that in 2016, video game sales exceeded $24.5 billion in the US. For perspective, it was $16.5 billion in 2015. The game industry employs a pretty significant number of people in the United States. There are over 65,000 employed directly by game development companies. When expanded to include those indirectly employed, those numbers rise to over 220,000. If you'd like to check out the numbers, we'll have a link to a report over at OneRuleBeCool.com. Electronic Arts has done something rather surprising this week. Remember the MMORTS Battleforge? No? Well, neither does anybody else. Except, of course, a few die-hard fans and EA's lawyers. Electronic Arts has a reputation for being litigious and money-grubbing. That's why it came as a shock when, this week, EA gave their blessing to a group of fans to work on the game Skylords Reborn, a new custom server for Battleforge, so long as the developer doesn't claim to be affiliated with EA or release paid DLC. The developers are, however, allowed to commercialize the game. That said, the developers are currently looking for better ways to monetize the project, as the game had a nasty reputation as being pay-to-win back when it first launched. These new developers are working on stripping out those elements. As a huge fan of Mojang Scrolls, which is somehow still alive, I'd love for this case to set a precedent. When a game dies, when, more specifically, a publisher decides to stop supporting a game in spite of there being a community in place, these publishers might be best off just allowing the community to take the reins on the game instead of keeping it in IP limbo forever. For now, maybe it means that there's hope for Dawngate. In Nintendo Switch news, we have some good news about the upcoming Splatoon 2. Nintendo has announced that the game will support both wired LAN play as well as a spectator mode. The way that the LAN mode works is that up to 8 systems can be docked in a single location for private tournaments. This way you can have fun with your friends offline. 2 additional Switch systems can be used for the game's spectator mode. Splatoon 2 is currently in development for the Nintendo Switch. The sequel to Nintendo's candy-colored Squid Ink shooter for Wii U, this new game is set to see a few short stress tests, the Splatoon 2 Global Test Fire, as it's been dubbed, from March 24th through the 26th, 2017, for all Nintendo Switch users. While we're talking first-party Nintendo titles, this week they announced the expansion pass for the upcoming Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which will be available for $20 at launch and will grant access to 2 sets of DLC. The first content will be available in-game immediately and puts a few treasure chests in the Great Plateau, the first of which contains a shirt for Link with the Nintendo Switch logo, so he can declare his brand loyalty as he adventures. The other 2 are apparently just extra items. The first content pack will also bring an additional Cave of Trials challenge, a hard mode, and an unexplained feature for the in-game map. All this stuff comes out in the summer. The second content pack is set to be released during the 2017 holiday season and brings a new dungeon and original story. According to Nintendo, these expansion passes are available for both the Switch and Wii U versions of the game and are the only way to obtain this DLC, as the content will not be made available for individual purchase.
長くエンジョイしてほしいと思っていますので、どうぞよろしくお願いします。
In Pokemon Go news, this week Niantic released Chikorita, Cyndaquil, Totodile, and a huge number of other second-generation Pokemon from the Gold and Silver games. Additionally, new evolutions of existing Pokemon have also been released, such as Steelix. Further, there are now Pokemon genders, the precursor to Pokemon breeding, which is bound to come in a later update. Additionally, they've introduced new berries, such as the Nana berries, which will slow down wild Pokemon, making them easier to catch, as well as the Pinap berries, which doubles the amount of candy dropped upon a successful capture. In case you're just waking up from a coma, first off, congratulations and thank you for tuning in. Pokemon Go is a cell phone Pokemon game that was a huge hit when it was released summer of 2016. It allows players to catch Pokemon in the real world. Unfortunately, the player base has dwindled dramatically due to a lack of content and removal of the game's tracking system. This practically ruins the game for players who don't live in urban areas. Niantic, the company responsible for the development of Pokemon Go, quite infamously made a number of bad decisions accompanied by a lack of proper communication with their player base. Apparently, Niantic has plans to make the game more engaging by adding a Pokemon trading system and allowing battles outside of gyms, though they haven't really given an ETA on this. Personally, I'm glad that Niantic has updated the game with new Pokemon at long last, but I'm worried that it's too little too late. It's wintertime here in the United States. Who wants to run around catching Pokemon when you can't feel your fingers? At least you can now turn your Eevees into Espeon or Umbreon. If you name an Eevee Sakura, it will turn into an Espeon. Tamao is how you get an Umbreon. Just be sure to rename your Eevee before you evolve it, otherwise you'll get a random evolution. Also keep in mind that the naming trick only works once per evolution. Pokemon Go is available on Android and iOS. In game releases this week, minimalist puzzle game Circles was released on Steam. I've spent the last couple weeks playing bits of it, and I have to say that I enjoy it, but it's not the sort of puzzler I can recommend to just anybody. The game's premise is that you have to navigate your circle to a goal circle, and you have to figure out your way around obstacle circles. Some of these obstacles are affected by your movement. Now this is a game with a minimal aesthetic, and unfortunately minimum challenge. I appreciate simple gameplay, but actually solving the puzzles wasn't at all hard. I feel like the game becomes challenging enough to become engaging a little bit too late in the set of levels where it inverts the control scheme and then calls on you to solve multiple puzzles at once. Those are fun, but I wish that the game had more like that. That said, the game's minimal design is really cool. There isn't any sort of text in the game, just pure puzzling. You may want to check out Circles if you're looking for an aesthetically chill game that you can relax with. If you're looking for hard puzzles, you may want to look elsewhere. Circles is available on Mac and Windows. Puzzle platformer Boor was released on Mac, Windows, and Linux this week, and it looks pretty interesting. In this game, you play as a girl with the ability to multiply herself. She has landed on the planet Eden, which is home to a human colony that's been nearly wiped out by a malevolent AI, the titular Boor. It's up to the girl to use her ability to solve puzzles, beat Boor, and save the world. Thus far, the game's gotten great critical acclaim, as well as a lot of praise from players. From what I've been hearing, its puzzles are really well designed, challenging, but not unfair. It seems that in spite of its name, Boor isn't a bore, and it's available right now on Steam. The game, Hidden Folks, was released on Mac, Windows, Linux, and iOS this week, and it's highly unusual. It's a game about searching for the titular hidden folks in large crowds. It's a bit like Where's Waldo, albeit with cute black and white animations and a bizarre assortment of mouth-generated noises. So far, Hidden Folks has garnered a lot of praise from the players, and it's well worth checking out if you're looking for an aesthetically pleasing hidden object game. Roguelike RPG, Rogue Empire, Prelude, was released on itch.io this week for Mac and Windows, and thus far it's pretty interesting. I've played a little bit of it, This game is essentially a prequel to something much bigger that the developer is currently working on. Thus far, it shows promise. The game is a turn-based RPG. Every move you make counts as a turn. Now, I'll be honest, it's a little rough around the edges. A lot rough around the edges. But this is in alpha, so keep that in mind. You can download it for free, but if you choose to drop $8, you'll get early access to the finished game once it's done. It's already been greenlit for distribution on Steam. The crowdfunding project for the procedurally generated racing game Smugglecraft caught our attention this week. Currently in development by the St. Louis-based Happy Badger Studio, it's set to be released on PS4, Mac, Windows, and Linux. Apparently, the game's story will feature a branching narrative about what you choose to transport on your hovercraft. You can accept smuggling contracts from the many inhabitants of Dural, some legal, some not so much, according to the game's Kickstarter page. That's a weird way to put it. Wouldn't a legal smuggling contract just be shipping? Are you doing some sort of hardcore tax evasion? Anyway, the game's use of procedural generation sounds pretty exciting. Every track in the game will employ it, so you'll never race the same road twice. At current, the game's in a beta phase. The developers are working on online multiplayer and have plans to support up to 16 players online in a race. You can find out more about Smugglecraft by searching for it on Kickstarter, or by checking out the post for this week's episode at OneRuleBeCool.com.
For 2 years, Smugglecraft has been a side project of ours while we've mostly done client work. But in the past 6 months, we stopped doing client work and Smugglecraft has been our primary focus.
We need this final push from the community to help finish this game with the level of polish we know we can achieve.
We're asking for your help. Join us in the last few months of this journey to help us realize this dream.
City-building game Cities Skylines was announced for the Xbox One this week. In this game you build and manage, as you may have guessed, your own city, dropping roads, deciding which areas are residential, commercial, or industrial zones, and doing your best to keep raw sewage out of the drinking water. The game's been a hit on PC, and it's well worth checking out if you're into the genre. Cities Skylines is set to be released on Xbox One sometime this spring. Personally, it's a game that I really love. There's something sort of soothing about running your own little city, zooming in, watching people going about their daily lives. Just be careful not to grow too quickly. It is surprisingly easy to cause an energy generation crisis. Also, pro tip, don't put garbage dumps next to residential areas. Finally, we leave you with the latest trailer for The Gardens Between, a surreal adventure game that's set to hit Mac and Windows late this year. It's the story of a couple of best friends building constellations and telling the story of their friendship. I'm looking forward to seeing how it turns out. That's it for this week's game news. For all the greatest game news and editorials, be sure to follow at OneRuleBeCool on Twitter and Instagram. Follow me at Jordan_Cameron for my own views.
プレイステーション